office hour for the Oregon State University PDC-PRO Fall 2024 cohort. This is call number 5, and the next lesson is lesson 5, the water survey plus watershed map plus site water flow. So it's three assignments, three separate sections here. Due next Monday, December 9th at 9 a.m. Pacific. Now, a little reminder that I sent out with the email last night, yesterday afternoon, evening. This will be the last lesson before our break. And so once this is submitted, then you've got a break all the way through till January 6th, which is going to be our next office hour call, which will be in preparation for lesson 6, which will be due the following Monday on January 13th. Okay, so let's get into it. I can see Michael's here. I'm just going to scroll on back, make sure I'm set up on my slides. Here we go. So water survey, okay. And I'm going to give another minute there. Okay. Okay. Unmute you. Good morning, Michael. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Susan. Can you hear me?
I cannot hear you. I just unmuted you.
Okay, let me try again.
Okay, you're good. You're good. Okay.
Good. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it just takes a minute. I'm just going to reach over and grab my water.
How are things with you, Susan?
Oh, they're great, Michael. Thank you. How about you?
Yeah, doing okay. Doing okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Just had my daughter was off school for a week for Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
We took a trip to Joshua Tree.
Oh, nice.
Just a couple of days though. We had a family thing on Thanksgiving Day, so we were back in town.
Okay. And town for you is?
La Mesa, close to San Diego.
Yeah. You're La Mesa. Okay, cool. Good morning, Morgan.
Hello there.
Hi. Looks like you're in a different setting today.
I am.
You are?
Took the call in the greenhouse since there's noise with the kids home today.
Were your kids home from school for Thanksgiving week last week?
Yeah. They do homeschool, but some of their classes were canceled this week as well.
Yeah, we're the same. A little bit of a juggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And our babysitter hosted Thanksgiving feast, so she was like, "I cannot do this week." I'm like, "I totally understand. We need you more than ever, but I totally understand."
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna give another minute or two to see who shows up. Morgan, how is progress going for you?
Slow, but making some progress. I think being offline has been helpful. So I'm on lesson 2 still right now.
Okay.
I'm still trying to decide which property to go with. Because the university where I'm, got some relationships there, they actually gave me access to their property, so I can go over there and take measurements and do that. So I'm considering maybe doing that. Okay. But yeah, I'm going to try to do
go ahead.
multiple things, but maybe just submit one. So just trying to figure out which one I'm submitting.
Cool. How big is the school site?
I think it's just a couple acres.
Okay. I will say one of the instructors that does some of the tutorials reached out to me looking for more rural, like not urban or suburban sites in California.
Yeah.
Because we kind of have a dearth of those. We get a lot of suburban and urban sites. So from that angle, I mean, you pick ultimately just pick one and run with it. But a slightly larger site can be a little bit more challenging, but also a little bit more interesting. So
yeah,
that would be fine.
Yeah, and then there's another site. Maybe I can talk to you about it offline. But
sure. Okay.
I'd kind of be interested in your input on how to approach it as well.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we're 10:33, so I'm going to jump in and just give you guys an overview of what this assignment coming up looks like. Don't gasp. It is probably the largest, it's arguably the largest assignment or set of assignments lesson in the course. So a little bit intimidating going into the break. Conversely, lesson 6 that comes up after the break is relatively straightforward and easy. It's the soil analysis one, which I think most students, it's a lot more hands-on stuff, but it's pretty straightforward. It's kind of, there's some replication there. So because this is one of the larger lessons, it's split into 3. Here's Bryson. Okay. Good morning, Bryson. Can you hear us? Oh, good morning. Okay, I'm just doing a little quick overview of the lesson, and then we'll get into questions. I'm gonna hit mute. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so it is divided into 3. So the water survey is worth 3 points. Watershed map is 10, and the site water flow analysis is 11 points. So it's a total of 24 points. So, like I said, it's one of the larger assignments, or the largest assignment in the course. So piece by piece, the water survey is only worth 3 points. It's pretty straightforward. It's just fill in the blanks. Do pay attention. Now let me pull up a share screen. Okay. So when you go into the water survey, do pay attention to these details on the left-hand side. There's some specifics, like if you're on well water, depth of the well, what's the flow rate, like liters or gallons per minute. If you're using rainwater, do you have cisterns, pumps? Are you storing rainwater in soil already, like using like some earthworks or anything? If you're on city water, some brief overview of what the process is for management of that. So how it's delivered. For instance, in our city, we have 2 separate reservoir systems and 3 separate delivery companies. So it depends where you're at in the city, where you're not just getting it from Camarillo Public Water, you're getting it from one of 3 different companies, which can prove very important. It proved very important in the mountain fire a few weeks ago because 2 of the 3 companies had significant damage to their infrastructure and ingress of of toxic wastewater. So there's quite a few people in the city that weren't able to use their water pretty much at all. So it is really important to get specific on where your city water is coming from. And then as far as wastewater, where does it go? If you've got a leach field, where is that on your site? Is there any maintenance for septic systems similar? What's the pump out schedule? Any of those sort of things. When was it installed? Is that outdated infrastructure? You're going to have to look at reinstalling it at some point. All of those things are good to know. If you're on municipal wastewater, do you guys have a fairly up-to-date, like state-of-the-art wastewater processing facility? Can you visit that? Some people actually do get out to their local wastewater facility and get some pictures of what that looks like and talk to people working there to find out how that works. Include some images that help illustrate that, and you're good.
Susan, I've got a question on that. So the title of that slide is drinking water and wastewater. So does that include rainwater collection and clean water that's not used for drinking? Because I know there's a second slide for the rainwater stuff. But
yeah.
Is a water source like rainwater tanks, even if we're just mostly using city water?
If you're mostly using city water, you could add it as I've seen students do it both ways, either adding it into the drinking water source or like drinking/site water.
Okay, I got you.
To specify, or you could put it into the next slide onto rainfall. Like there can be quite a bit of information to crowd into that one little text box, and then on the following slide, it's just like rainfall. Like there's relatively little. So decide where it fits, change the text to specify what you've got, and you're fine.
Gotcha.
Okay. So similar, yeah. So what's your record 24-hour rainfall, annual average rainfall for your site, or the closest place that you can get info for? So especially for rural sites, often, the closest might be 10 or 15 miles away at like a local airport or the next town over. You're welcome to use that data. If you've got It's excellent to have your own data logger. If you have a rural site, I really recommend doing that because it can differ quite significantly. If even just from living on that site or from visiting, you know that, if it rains 4 inches at the airport, we're probably only going to get 2.5, or you're going to get about half or less, either due to being in a rain shadow or an effective topography or some other impact. Just feel free to add that as a note. Just put the information there that you do have. And if you can't find data specific to your site, we understand. We see it all the time. Okay, here's John. Okay. And then roofing materials. You may not have a structure on your site, not unusual. If you do not have a structure and you're planning to build, add some information about any research that you've done into roofing materials, what you plan to use, any of that. If you've got different types of roofs, give some specifics on that, what you're planning to replace, what's going to be good and for how long. All of that information is useful. It's useful for you to be able to refer back to down the road, when you're doing your design stuff. And then impact of major precipitation events. So if you're likely to be impacted, for instance, by mudslides, flooding, all of that, that's a good place there. Deep snowfall is another one. Now, keep in mind that this survey is a really good information collection point. It is worth 3.3 out of 24 points for this assignment. So get your information here and keep moving on. Don't spend the bulk of your time that you've got to work on it in that assignment if you feel like you're lagging or rushing a little bit. Okay, and then the standard SWOT analysis from the perspective of your water survey. So this might be strengths. You've got new roofing, you've got metal roofing, you've got rainwater cisterns in place, or a really good reliable water source. Weaknesses might be old roofing that is going to be needing replaced. Threats might be that you're in a flood zone, mudslide zone, whatever. I think we're all used to that. And then if you've got any questions, drop them there. Okay. John, I just want to make sure you can hear us. You're good? I can unmute you.
Oh.
You're good. Okay. Cool. All right. So
sorry, my internet's super slow. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm here.
Okay. All right. I'm just doing an overview of the assignments or the.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. So watershed maps. This is one where I do see quite a few students get hung up on. This slide right here, it says watershed practice sheet, should in theory look identical for every single student. It doesn't always, variations happen. But essentially what it's for, it's a 1-point assignment on the rubric. It's essentially to show us that you know how to delineate a watershed and indicate the direction of water flow on this map. So there's a tutorial. Essentially, you're finding the high points, the ridge lines, and outlining where that. It's really hard for me to do without showing you where the watershed is. But so you're going to outline the watershed boundary. The watershed basin is going to be the solid color inside that watershed boundary. Now, this is kind of an inside tip to if you're looking for easy points to pick up. Once you've drawn the watershed boundary as a polygon, your watershed basin is just the solid color inside that. So you're just showing us that, if this is your watershed boundary, the color inside it is the basin and not outside of it. So I think that's pretty straightforward. Water flow lines. So where is water going to flow from a high point down into the valley? Now, keep in mind, if you know this already, if you don't, water is always going to flow at a right angle to contour. So if you're drawing an arrow, say going down a ridge, you're going to be drawing it so that it's basically perpendicular to that ridge. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at a topographical map. You can get kind of confused between say what's a depression and what's a hilltop, and where exactly the water is going to run down from a feature. So just keep in mind that water flow is going to be going perpendicular to to contours at a 90-degree angle. And there is a tutorial video to support you with that. Use these little red arrows to pinpoint your high sites or your high points, and then use the yellow to indicate where the design site could be. Oh, yeah. Okay. So the yellow is the design site indicated on there already. So I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Okay. So that slide, as it is completed, is worth 1 point for you. Okay. So your macro watershed catchment. So there's going to be a macro and a micro. You are welcome to add an additional slide in here if you want to, or even a couple. I would really, stick to one if you're going to add an additional, because this can be a little bit subjective. What you're looking to do is delineate for your macro watershed. You're looking to show us what is the greater watershed of which you're a part. So we're defining it as the largest river basin in which your site exists. Now, there's a note here that for coastal sites, this may not apply. I have yet to see a site that cannot have some macro watershed catchment delineated, because every spot on Earth is going to have some sort of a basin where water is collecting and going down towards it. So you're just trying to find that main, like on your topographical map. For this level, you'll probably be able to find like a county level delineation of that watershed. Now, it might be something larger, like, for instance, if the San Pedro river system is very large, then you might find sub-watersheds within that, and then your site falls within one of those sub-watersheds. Go ahead and choose the one that like shows where your design site is quite clearly, shows where the water is going to be coming in as it influences you, rather than the larger watershed. Feel free to reach out with questions. I get a lot of questions on what this should look like, and there's a lot of variation, which is why they put a lot of examples in here. Now, like to illustrate my point here, this is the Great Lakes region. This is a huge region. So this design site is within, I always have to remember, and I grew up in Canada, I can't remember which one that is. But you're gonna, they've narrowed it down to the individual lake watershed, and then where their design site is within that watershed. So go ahead to pick a scale that makes sense, that tells the story for your design site. Now, here's another example within the Carolinas. There is quite possibly an even larger watershed basin that encompasses this smaller river basin, but they've highlighted that specific river, like this is the water flow coming down here. This is where their design site is. There are a couple of smaller watersheds that don't directly influence the water site or the design site that are included there. Same graphics apply there, the watershed boundary, watershed basin, water flow line, and the design site. Okay. If you can use your own imagery, that's really preferable here. Now, I know a lot of students do pull in, for instance, like a map that's already been drawn by someone, by a county organization, and that's fine as long as you can clearly still show all of those elements: the watershed boundary, the watershed basin, the flow line or flow lines, and the design site. And make sure that your legend actually matches the map. So whether they've provided a legend or you're making one to match, make sure that it lines up so that this actually means what it is on the map. Once again, as usual, your information bar and your scale should be up to date and accurate to your map. Okay. And then your micro watershed catchment. Okay. Now, this, again, is subjective. For a suburban site, often, because of development and because of storm drains, the way that we direct water within urbanized landscapes, it's not going to necessarily look like a geographic map. It may look something more like this, like where they've directed water flow away from or towards the design site based on how the development has been laid out. You may find, you may be able to do kind of a combination, like this looks like kind of a geographic delineation, but then there's these larger areas that also contribute to that. Go through the examples and get some ideas for what's going to work for your site. Again, feel free to reach out with questions at any point. This micro watershed is going to be the one that contributes water directly to your site. So it influences your immediate site's water flow, or can contribute, similarly can contribute runoff. So which is a bit different than the macro watershed, in that the macro watershed, let me see, there's so many examples here. The macro watershed can easily include areas where the water flows right on by. It doesn't influence your site directly. Whereas your micro watershed, there is potential for that site water flow to impact your site. Okay. And then same thing, same graph, choose or make the graphics fit your map. This one is going to be much less likely where you're going to find a map suitable to reuse. In fact, I've almost no sites that I can think of would have a map that would be specific enough to reuse for your micro watershed. So you're going to be drawing this one, and use whatever maps are available to you to make that, basically to tell that story clearly. Okay, breath of fresh air. There's no SWOT analysis on this particular assignment. So you get, scroll over there. There's just the, come on, there we go. Okay, just the student questions or feedback on that assignment, but there's no SWOT analysis. So if you're wondering if you're missing something, you're not. Okay. This is a big assignment. Okay, site water flow analysis. Once it starts to come together, I think it does start to kind of come together on its own, and it's easier to go through it, but there are quite a few pieces to it to keep in mind. Okay, here you're going to be using your base map. If you wanted to, you could use your aerial base map. I like to see just the line drawing. I think it keeps things a lot clearer. But you're going to be indicating the site water flow both on and off. So where water comes onto your property and where and how it leaves, whether that's through a storm drain or a steep slope. Indicate those on the map with the water flow lines. You're going to be indicating, as you can see in this example over here, I'm not sure why suddenly it's not dragging. There we go. What the water flow is off the roof line. So this is where it's helpful to get specific about, or to know where your gutters are, where your downspouts are. Because water, for instance, in this house is going to flow, say, to this downspout off of this roof, but to this downspout off of this roof, and so on. So this is where you want to get specific about that, because it tells you where you're actually going to have water to access, for instance, to feeding a garden, sending into a rain garden, deflecting off the site, and so on. Okay. Okay, now you get to do some calculations. Insert chart of precipitation by month. Here's what that can look like. It can be a graph. Most commonly, it's a graph. You can also make it a little table with that data. So what that's going to look like month by month. Choose your units of measurement, whether you're using metric or imperial. Go through these calculations, which are, they're spelled out, I think, quite clearly. So the total area of your site. If your site is has like an irregular shape, you can estimate it as if you can closely estimate it as a rectangle, that's great. Better is to take it into Google Earth Pro and make sure you've drawn that out as a polygon. And then when you go into properties, you can see what the area of that site is. So then you're going to use acre. You can convert acres into square feet, meters into hectares, or whatever your units are. Get what your yearly average rainfall in either feet or millimeters. So make sure that your units are consistent here. So you're going to be measuring rainfall in feet. So keep that in mind if you've got a measurement in inches, or you're going to be measuring it in millimeters. Okay, and then that's going to give you your total rain falling on the site in an average year. Okay. And then this one here is going to be your 100-year rain event. If that data is available, it may not be. Some sites, it's just we don't have those kind of records. You can multiply it by a factor. Say like what would like an absolutely almost unfathomably extreme rainfall event for for us. For instance, like here in Southern California last year, LA County, I believe, got 28 inches in a 24-hour period. It was, I think it was in the 20. I need to double check my numbers on that. But if there's like an extreme rainfall event, calculate what that's going to be, because it'll give you a sense of like what your storage capacity should be. So calculating enough that you can capture that, and then what you're going to be doing in terms of like a flood event. Pardon me. Okay, a few more calculations, and then it gets easier, and you're almost done. Okay, here you're going to be calculating what your rainfall catchment is for each roof. So if you've got multiple buildings on site, if you have no buildings on site, just choose, just take one of these rows. You can delete the rest and make up an area, whether you're going to build a house or a small shed. Just include that roof area so that you can work this all out, showing that you know how to do those calculations. So there's instructions there. If there's currently no roof area on your site, propose a small structure that you can calculate to demonstrate you understand the process, and then just indicate that that's what you're doing. And then you're going to do the same for impermeable surfaces. So that'll be any like concrete driveways. Usually patio surfaces, stuff like that. Okay. Now, site water flow, this slide is an extra credit. I generally recommend it for most people if you're able to do it, if you've got the time. It is worth doing to understand this is basically a calculation of your micro watershed. So what is the entire volume of water that could potentially influence your site? And that can be really useful if, for instance, you're in a suburban site and your house is at like the low end of a slope, or it's at like sort of at the bottom of a basin. So that can be helpful to show you those numbers. It's also helpful on larger sites where you can get an idea of actually how much rainfall is dropping on your entire property, which can be quite eye-opening. I mean, it's generally in the millions of gallons, which people don't expect to see. Again, that's an extra credit. So if you're rushing to get things in, go ahead and submit before you've got that done. I do recommend, if you can, go ahead and do that. There's a couple. Oh, they've got one example there. Okay, and then your SWOT analysis for your site water flow. Now, this is going to be specific to the water on your site. So threats might be, you've got a large influx of water from a neighbor's site that's got pesticides or herbicides or something. Weaknesses might be you don't currently have any water catchment, your gutters are out, you're in disrepair, or you don't have gutters. Strengths, conversely, could be you've got brand new gutters and you've got a really skookum rainfall collection system. And you might notice some opportunities that come up. And then your conclusions, any questions, and you're done. Okay. I've still got everybody. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing there. Anybody wants to take a breath or a drink? And do we have questions? Go ahead and take a look.
So I got a couple of questions, Susan. For the micro watershed in a suburban setting, So our house is on a little bit of a slope. It's almost level, but there's a low grade slope on the site, and the roadway outside is there's just a curb, and so all the rainwater just bypasses our. That wouldn't be included as part of the micro watershed, the roadway outside the property, right? Because all that's just diverting on by. None of it is collected.
But no way to bring it up, correct? Okay. The reason I ask is because we have a similar. I'm just going to describe it to you. Meantime, I'm bringing your site up just so I can take a closer look. So our house is at the top. I mean, like most suburban houses, you know, they create like a convex place to, you know, to build the house so that water drains away. So we get water running down the street. What we've done in the past is we've actually dammed that. Well, we've put like sandbags or blocks up,
right?
Pumped that water off the street up onto our yard.
Mm-hmm.
So normally that would just flow right on by and we lose it all. It would go down the storm drain. We'd never see it. But because we've created infrastructure in that we could harvest it, I would include it. Is that something?
I mean, it's something I've thought about doing in the front yard that's where the road is. During a heavy rain event, just to like channel some of it into the front yard. But I haven't even tried that yet.
Okay. Is it a busy street?
No, it's not especially busy.
Okay.
There's parked cars on it. It's short as well, so it's like the water isn't coming very far.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you could go ahead and make that like the boundary then, or one part of the boundary.
Yeah.
With your micro watershed. Yeah. If there's really no realistic way that it's going to get onto your property, then I would make that a boundary. Sure.
And then my other question was on the micro side, is that like water that like falls on the neighbor's yard, for instance, or irrigation water that they use, that just flows underground onto our property because of the slope. Is that right? It
could, yeah. Yeah. So if your neighbor happened to leave their irrigation running or it broke, that is a potential contribution to your state.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And you can delineate that too in your legend, or if you want to use different colors, like, pardon me, like say a white for like intermittent, potential but not normal, and then like your regular site water, which is going to be your rainfall. If you want to get to that level of detail, that would be fine.
Okay.
Because we definitely have influences like that, like our upstream neighbors periodically, I'm going to say like maybe 2 or 3 times a year, either have a line break or they leave the irrigation running, and suddenly our storm ditch is full, which we've dammed so that we can pump out of it. And so we pump all their water up onto our yards. We're like, oh, we just got like an extra 15 or 20,000 gallons of water. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Which would normally, that would be part of our watershed boundary. So. I'm just noticing, Michael, that I don't, this isn't really, I've got an old version of your presentation bookmarked. So the one that you submitted for lesson 4 is the one that I should be keeping track of?
Yeah, but I'm going to revamp that because I've had major problems with the conversion from PowerPoint to Google Slides.
Yeah. Okay.
The formatting and the colors, especially.
Yeah.
The main issue is the base map grayscale, which is used several figures, is reverting to the color version in Google Slides. It's really annoying because it makes everything look kind of weird and confusing.
Right. Okay. John.
But I'm not going to do that for this. I'll do my best for this assignment. I'm planning on revamping it during the break.
Okay. All right, that's fine. As long as I've got, as long as I know that you're, obviously you're submitting the current link, but okay. I just saw that John dropped out because his internet was spotty, so. How are things going for you, Bryson?
Good. I've had a couple busy weeks here, but I am doing my best to catch up.
Okay.
I'm currently doing the microzones. I was doing that just before class today.
Okay.
As you know, there's like 4 different like sections of the property that I've mapped out. I think going forward, I'm just going to concentrate on one so that I can keep up better with the class, and
Sure.
then go back on my own time and complete the rest. So that's sort of my goal.
Okay. Okay.
Hopefully that'll help me catch up the next couple assignments here in next couple weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Often a good idea just to kind of zero in a little bit, because you can always apply this afterwards.
Right.
Bryson, you have the big property up in the Eastern Sierra, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Are you spending most of your time up there, or you're down in? I think you're somewhere in San Diego, right?
San Diego, yeah. We haven't spent too much time up there as of recent. It's gotten pretty cold. We're generally here in San Diego. Our family's down in this area, so we live full time in San Diego, and then more and more. We just purchased the property in August, so I think more and more over time we want to, start being out there. So putting in infrastructure. Right now, there's like 2 houses, and they're pretty much inundated with critters or not comfortable and not sure how healthy they are. So there's not a lot of places to stay long term at the moment.
Is the water that's on the site there coming from the spring that they use for the bottling plant up there?
Not from that spring, no. There's a couple natural springs just on the property itself. So I think maybe like 50 or 60 years ago, they put in these massive cast iron piping about a half mile across the property to catch one of the springs, and that's where the majority of the water comes from. But it's currently not potable just because there are cows that come through the area, and I think they've like defecated around the spring box, and so they're kind of just. I think it's been leaking. We got the water tested, and it did come up for a bacteria count. So at some point, we'll have to put in a filtration system of some sort to make it potable.
It looks like a good area anyhow.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. It feels like we found a little gem in that area, and that area is great. I don't know how much you spend time in there. There's plenty of hiking and just great things to explore.
Yeah. Okay. Morgan, do you want to poke around about it? Talk about your third site or the university site while we're here.
Yeah, sure. So I got a buddy who is also he's looking at a property in Santa Rosa area, Santa Rosa Valley there in Camarillo, and so I'm kind of curious about like if it's a prospective property and I'm helping somebody kind of assess the property and its potential, productivity or whatever. If you don't have like full unfettered access to the property, like what things can I do to like help him? I guess is like, have you ever had jobs like that where you're just trying to scope out a potential property for someone, and where do you stop and start the project and not get in too far over your skis, knowing that this could fall out and it's not going to work. But I'm just trying to figure out how much to help him, how much to commit to.
Yeah. I'm assuming it's a built site, correct?
Yeah. So, but it's almost 8 acres. It's got the is it the Santa Rosa River or something that goes through the backyard? I forget the name of the little river, but it's like, I remember you saying on one of our other calls, like if you're looking on a map and you've got a blue line going on the map, like you're going to have some limitations, and he's got that. And so I'm trying to also get a sense of like what he can or can't do. And I mean, part of that's going to be if he goes under contract and has his, whatever that is, where you can fall out of escrow because of different, all the inspections and stuff in that window. But I'm trying to just help him kind of think through some of that stuff. And
Yeah, some of the main questions, I guess I would find out for sure what that is. That maybe, I was just trying to pull up Google Earth to check for you, and then I was like, oh, you probably don't want to post that address on a recording that's going to go. So, but I was going to take a look, because there's Caleguas, goes through there. Yeah, I believe there is also Santa Rosa.
Let me see if I can find it really quick on the.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be the main one, is figuring out, like, it's actually a lot of, what's going to be in this assignment is figuring out what that watershed. Here we go. Yeah, figuring out what the water situation.
Yeah.
Is from.
So it's Arroyo Santa Rosa is and it's
okay.
There's some. I was looking it up a little bit. There's some sort of there's the Camarillo Water District, I guess, right through there. And then there's some other water kind of governing agency, something or other, that they formed. And he's just outside that. He's just upstream from whatever that is. So I don't know if that, I'm sorry, I don't know the names of all these, but I just.
No, that's fine. Does he have an idea of what he wants to do?
Well, his background is he's done like avocado ranches. He's selling his 10-acre avocado ranch, and this has a smaller scale avocado and grape vineyard on it.
Okay.
That he's considering, doing a little bit of that, but there's a lot of actual land that's not developed, and I think I've just kind of been explaining to him kind of permaculture principles and a little bit more, diversity on the property than what he's used to having at his previous place. Mm-hmm. And so with an eye towards that, just trying to think through the potential for the property and assess it.
Yeah. So if he's already got stuff on there, then it's already, it's very likely the property is entirely zoned ag, unless there's some other, like, multiple titles or something weird in there.
Yeah. It's rural executive 5 is the zoning or whatever it is. Rural. So it's like a residential. It's a residential zoning technically, but he has some ag flexibility, it sounds like.
Okay. Yeah. So then I think that's probably that's a good place to start from if that's what he wants to continue doing, and then it would really be a matter of, like, working in diversity. There's probably going to be a lot of, like, soil amendment needed. We were briefly in touch with a guy in Somas who had taken over an avocado ranch out there, and basically spent 10 or 12 years applying compost teas and grew it into actually really diverse mixed dragon fruit, passion fruit, interspersed with the avocado, and then put in some other fruit trees, because a lot of the avocados were dying back. But he could still get, I think, like between 30 and 50% of a decent avocado crop, and that was enough in addition to these, additional more exotic crops that he was growing to make it financially viable. So in terms of cautions, it might just be like finding out more about that stream. It doesn't, I know that area fairly well. They're not on, I'm looking at the map. There's no, unless they're really backed up further, like towards Hill Canyon. There's no real, for instance, like slide dangers there, slide risk. They're not in a significant flood risk. I could give you, there's people to talk to in that area that have been there for a long time, especially a lot of, like, the equestrian centers and long-term ranching properties. So those are always worth talking to and finding out, what you can about the area. So when I have done that for a few people. I actually I did it for a former student a few months ago for a property in Alaska. And it was actually really fun, because a lot of it was pointing out things that she hadn't even known. Like, she thought it was a nice property, but she hadn't really taking note of like how the aspect, like the way the buildings were oriented and the way they were arranged was actually really, really favorable, to capture what summer sun they could get. They were well sheltered, weren't at significant fire risk. They did have some died off forests that they should probably be dealing with pretty quickly if they took the property on. So it's things like that. Like it was pretty straightforward. A lot of it was confirmation of like, oh yeah, this is actually a really nice property. These are some of the assets. You might want to look at replacing this roof sooner than later, so you've got more water catchment. Anything like that, like they might not be thinking of. Often, it's surprising how few people are actually thinking about water catchment. I mean, off of a 1,000-foot roof, I mean, we fill a 5,000-gallon tank easily every winter. And people thought we were silly for putting in that big of a tank, and I'm like, if we could have 3, we would fill them.
Yeah.
No,
am I able to share like or put in the chat like an image of the property?
Sure. Is it? And Michael and Bryson, if you've got other questions, feel free to jump in.
I don't have any at the moment. I'm just happy to listen right now. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So can I? Yeah, it looks like I can do an image.
You can either do that or a screen share. I think I can.
See if I don't know if it works in Butter to upload an image.
Yeah.
So the image I just uploaded, the main property is kind of, you can see those avocados there and the grapevines beneath it. I don't know are you able to see that in a big enough size? Is that helpful or?
I'm trying to, I'm comparing it to what I'm looking at.
I'll give you I just did this on Google Earth, and then I dropped a couple pins on the, like, there's some solar panels you see at the bottom of that image. That's where the kind of the main developed part of the property sort of ends. So down that direction is where it's street facing for the home, but back behind it is kind of this big swath. The majority of the 8 acres sits behind that.
And what street is it facing? Santa Rosa Road. So is this?
It's Vista.
Oh, I see. North is up. Yeah. Okay.
Vista Grande is the name of the street.
Okay.
And so there's like a horse trail right adjacent to the property as well. So I actually just, because that's like public access, I went and just walked it yesterday to like check it out, and actually went into that kind of river kind of valley area, and it's like it's pretty steep in spots. Like the cliff, there's like probably a 40 or 50 foot drop off into that ravine in spots. I was even trying to think through. I remember, like you said, like you can't get in that river probably with an excavator and try to dam stuff off. But I was trying to think of other ways, like you mentioned with sandbags on your street. Like, how could I somehow help them if Santa Rosa Valley, they can't do wells apparently because the water district has some agreement. So how can he leverage that kind of river ravine in his backyard basically as an asset to help irrigate avocados or whatever? I was trying to think through ways to put on, a pond to just some sort of water catchment, and I don't know.
I'd be looking at tanks. You're probably that is going to be a dry bed most of the year.
Uh-huh.
The water that flows through that is very intermittent. It's probably going to be, when it does flow, it's going to be very sedimented.
Mm-hmm.
The pond here is basically an evaporation pool. So I would look more towards, tanks if you can do them for that. You'd want to run some numbers on what amount of supplemental irrigation you actually need. Like there's irrigation to the existing orchards.
Yeah.
There is. Okay. So I'd find out what that is. Like, how much water is it using? or if there's a deficit, what the deficit is like. I'm trying to, I can't turn on terrain here. Oh, terrain. Let's see. Yeah, I'd get talking to people in that area because
Okay.
it's closer to it is actually closer to that waterway than I thought. There we go. Yeah, and steeper. I mean, I'd be keen to go walk around there. That's awfully close. I mean, it's about 15 minutes away.
Yeah.
For us. Yeah, you'd want to be asking, or he'd want to be asking a lot of questions about what the existing irrigation infrastructure looks like, how much water they're using. There must be an existing well.
So he said there, and that's what he's a little bit skeptical of, is with his existing avocado ranch. He's kind of more in like Simi area right now.
Okay.
On the other side of the 23. He's got a well on his property there for those 10 acres he has. This, he's concerned because it has no well, you're going to be using, the city water to irrigate, and he just thinks you're not going to make any money on your avocados or your vineyard if you're paying for city water.
Yeah, if you don't have an ag water license, I don't know how you could make that work. I mean, besides the fact that the city water, well, yeah, I mean, if you, we find we're on a different water system. We're not on Camarillo. Our city water, we basically feel like we're killing plants when we use it. I don't know if it's the salt or what. I mean, you test it and it's tested fine, obviously. But it's a combination of it being so hard or something in it is just like, it's really hard to get stuff to germinate. It's really hard to get stuff growing in it. I guess established trees are going to be something different. No. Oh, so these thin lines are grapes, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. I'd be asking a lot of questions about what they're doing. I mean, most of those trees look dead already. I guess depending what time of year that was taken in March.
This was a Google Earth image I found that had the best resolution from like March of 2020.
Yeah, so March of 2020 and trees that look like that, I'd be very concerned.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Because that's 4 years ago, or almost 5 years ago. And that's coming out of the wet season.
Yeah.
So Morgan, when did they buy this property?
They're just looking at it now
and
considering getting into escrow on it. I'm just trying to help him do a lot of the legwork, just as far as as he's thinking about, and some sort of agricultural investment. His existing property with his avocados, he's got the whole backstory. He's got someone offering him a significant amount of money for his existing avocado ranch because there's a nearby equestrian center going in, and so he's selling it, but he wants to be able to roll it by means of a 1031 for tax purposes, to roll it into another quote unquote agricultural or investment property. And so he's considering this property as being, even though it's a gentleman's ranch, so to speak, it would allow him to move that money over to a new property and not have the tax consequence.
I mean, I just wonder if the trees and the vines are in the shape they're in is because the previous owner had high water bills or something.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is off the backside they've got kind of a white fence around the existing trees and vines, but it seems like they could have gone further and used more of the land. But yeah, I'm not sure. Again, with the water situation being what it is, I'm just not sure. Like, is that a deficit that they're taking on? Like, the financials, they sent the financials from the previous owner. He says they only make off those 100 avocado trees, which, by the way, they looked good from what I could tell when I walked the property yesterday. Okay. But they only make, he said, like $3,800 every 3 years. So that's like an average, I guess. So figure $1,300 a year. And then the grapes, they farm it out to some third party that just pays them a $2,500 lease each month for the grapevines. And I guess that whatever whoever they sell the grapes to, they've won awards and whatever for the grapes with the wine they've sold. But he's just skeptical of this property sort of being a loss leader as far as not making very much money on those 100 trees and grapevines.
Well,
compared to what he's
$2,500 a month.
No, this is a year.
A year. Okay, so I was going to say a month. I mean, that's a big difference. Okay.
Yeah.
You're almost not. I mean, yeah.
So that's what the financials that the seller has provided at this point, and he's just trying to figure out the economics of it.
Right, and he'd want to make money off of it.
I mean, ideally, you don't want to be hemorrhaging, but again, from a tax standpoint, if it's still advantageous for him to, sidestep $1 million in taxes, let's say,
oh sure,
you have to pay to be able to 1031 it into something else, it's still advantageous for him.
8 acres.
So.
Is he interested in livestock?
It's funny. He's had chickens and goats, and he just gave them away because I think he's just got two. He does like investment baking stuff, so okay. I think it's more. He likes the idea of it, but I think it's become more of a hassle for him than anything else. But what were your thoughts for that, as far as just using livestock on the property as well?
Well, that's one way to distribute water. I mean, you end up bringing a lot of biomass in because you're on a property like that. You're going to be feeding hay for a long time before you've got forage going. Possibly leasing it out. I've just got to zoom out a minute here. Okay, so you're north side of Santa Rosa Road. Yeah, so you don't even have doesn't really have good access to riding, some access to riding trails, but it doesn't look like a lot.
Yeah, so that riding trail goes along the left side of the property. So again, where those solar panels are, there's a trail that just hugs the left side of the property, goes down to the river valley, and then kind of veers left. And it seems like it's been maintained, but for a portion of it, where the horse trail completely overlaps the river basin, and presumably whatever the last rainfall, like they're amending it with sand, but it's super rocky now, where no one's going to take their horses through this riverbed for 200 or 300 feet. It's really kind of a broken trail as far as that goes. So I'm not sure how much that gets used right now.
Okay. Yeah, I know the south side of Santa Rosa, like in Hill Canyon, is really popular, but that north side, I'm not so sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess I'd get those details on the water. I can't imagine running an agricultural operation on city water and city water prices, which are only going to go up.
Yeah.
But yeah, really look into the financials. For sure, there's some diversification, amendment potential there. I think it would take livestock to do it because you need to get some biological activity in there. So whether that looks really steep to do any kind of a pastured poultry thing.
Yeah. And then there were some restrictions. So I was researching this too. I guess Ventura County, and you'd know better than I would. They have something about in the rules, a limit of, was it 3.0 units of livestock, and so you can do 4 cats or 4 dogs, or and each one's 0.25. They've got this calculation where they cap you at how many chickens you can have, and
I mean most municipal areas are capped at 5 chickens. We're capped at 5 hens and 4 adult rabbits over 6 months.
Okay.
So we're on a 1/4 acre in Camarillo. I think we have 16 rabbits that are well over 4 months or 6 months right now.
Yeah.
Most years we have close to 30 muscovies. We're now down to 5 chickens and 2 quail. It really depends on your neighbors.
Yeah. Right. That's what I figured. And this seems pretty private, that he could probably fudge the numbers a little bit, but I just didn't know how that's governed or.
Yeah, you said rural executive.
Yes.
Zoning? Okay.
That sounds right. It was RE, whatever that is, RE-5.
RE.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd be looking into that. Yeah, see what their regulations are. I'm not familiar with that.
It sounds like it's the same for most of the REs, whether you're RE1 for 1 acre or RE5. There was
Okay.
an RA where maybe there's a little more flexibility, but that's basically the back side of the river behind them. There's a property that has RA.
Yeah. It's a rezoning thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Find out find out numbers about the water. I mean, if that little amount of income is not something I'd want to hang my hat on, but I mean, if he was really interested in actually like growing some different crops, I could find him some contacts for White Dove Ranch. That was what it was. I was just like, what was the name? It was White Dove Ranch, and it was so mess. Where they basically diversified the whole thing with dragon fruit and stuff. Yeah, and the gentleman that owned it had to sell it. Oh, I can't find it now. I used to be able to find it online. Had to sell it in order to pay for his wife's care. And the son-in-law took it over and basically ran it into the ground. So I don't even know if it's anything to go and look at anymore. But it can be done. But on city water, I'd be super cautious. I would just be really cautious about what to do there.
And so what would be options then in a river valley like that as far as trying to harness water out of it, but not being so obvious that you're creating drama with?
No, I wouldn't. It's all area. I mean, you can see it. I ran into the same scenario with a guy in Topanga Canyon, and he was on a blue line but unnamed stream. It's just from my perspective, and especially like, I mean, if I was in a consulting position, like, you know, or like for you, I just would not, one, I wouldn't advise it. And two, I think the benefit would be so minimal because it's so seasonal.
So at the bottom where that horse trail is, where it crosses, there's actually water that's collected there that's just still. So again, I don't.
We had an extremely high rainfall year last year.
Okay.
So that's also, if I'm looking, that's at the bottom of the property.
Yeah, kind of the bottom, technically off the property.
Right.
I'm just wondering, like, obviously you want to be above board, but at the same time, like if he wanted to walk the river valley and stack the stones in such a way that it kind of creates like little mini dams along the way, does that somehow give him a little bit of latitude to capture some of that? And you know, when we do get seasons of rainfall, and then I'm thinking if he created a little pond kind of at the bottom left of the property that's somewhat low in elevation, but could somehow pump up water into like a little holding pond. I don't know. I'm just trying to think through ideas to get around the city water issue.
Yeah, I mean, he could do some restoration work in that stream, sure. Like putting some rocks in. If you put enough to actually pool enough water that it would be worth pumping into building a pond that he could pump into and then pumping into it.
Yeah.
Then you're running into a situation where you're robbing wildlife populations or like depleting that supply, like essentially like creating a habitat. And then the ethics of that feel very iffy. I mean, I guess I'm just looking at a flat picture and what I can see here on Google Earth, and it's easy to miss something when you're looking at like from 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
I'd be very hesitant, and because that's the bottom of the property, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're pooling it at the bottom, and then you have to pump it up. You might as well just use city water. Because
there's no benefit with like a solar pump or anything where you can just kind of passively be pulling water up.
maybe I would think that like just the maintenance on that infrastructure. I mean, and how. It's I can't see it being feasible or worth the time and energy, like the infrastructure to hold that water. Possibly, I mean, but pumping water out of a stream, not cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Putting it enough to pump it out is basically the same thing. Still not cool.
So like, I guess my thought process is like a lot of Andrew Milson's videos where there's a waterway and you're kind of building on contour swales, kind of bleeding off maybe a river, where you're kind of just widening out the river basin a bit, not totally on contour, but maybe slightly down a bit so that the water still flows that general direction and trickles back towards the stream, but you're just kind of broadening out. So I'm just trying to think through, is there a way to kind of feather out the width of the river for him such that he receives some irrigation benefit? Or it's still kind of going back towards the stream and it's not really a net loss, but it's...
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, and typically in those types of projects, that's something like a restoration grant, or like that's a restoration project if it's on public lands, or it's on a private property where they have like legal access to that, legal rights to that water.
And that would be in the, like the deed would say that, oh yeah, you have water rights or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it tells them what water rights he's got. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. I've got to wrap up. I'm taking over childcare next, so anyway, that was really interesting, Morgan. And where are you that was close? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were so close.
So no, I'm still in Santa Clarita area, but we attend church out that way in Camarillo, Thousand Oaks area.
Oh, okay.
A buddy I know out that direction, so
Gotcha.
he was kind of checking it out.
Yeah, cool. Alrighty, well, that was really interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love chatting through those kind of things. There's some real like, I'd ask more questions on that one. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.
Helpful? Okay. All right. Cool. Well, as you guys get there, shoot me questions about the watershed stuff if you need to. Ditto for folks on replay. So.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, you guys have a great week.
Thanks, guys.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone. Bye.